ranking the safeties for the 2024 NFL draft class. This is a group that's better than the consensus has told us about. We're going to talk about everybody and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson, always on the ones and twos. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I'm a national scout and a senior draft analyst. And thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. But I got to kick this intro to my guy, Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at The Talent Code. Keep talking to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champion, and the other side to this dynamic duo that we like to call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, where we bring you championship level content surrounding the NFL Draft 24/7, 365. Man, I have to start this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day, man. Listen, man, on today's podcast, we are talking safeties, right? A safety class that hasn't been talked about a lot. There's been names that's been popping up here and there, right? But we know NFL teams, we do more cover forward, too high situations, right? Those safeties are going to be more and more important. So we're going to have the conversations about what safeties should your NFL team go after. So make sure to stay tuned the entire show. And then we're going to wrap this thing up with the perfect fits. But listen, man, I always tell you at the top of the show, listen, hit the like button because I promise you this is the best NFL draft content out there. Don't forget to comment after each segment and listen. And then if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel with the best NFL draft content, subscribe to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast on YouTube. But DP, before we get this conversation started, why don't you hit them with our title sponsor?
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Breaking down and ranking and tiering these safeties, we're starting with the starters and the guys that we feel like day one, early in their rookie campaign, they're going to be starters and impact players for their defense. Keith, I'm going to list off four names that I feel good about, Keith. And number one is Tyler Nubin. We just talked about him last week, about the pro day. The numbers, athletically, the numbers weren't great, but his tape is great. His instincts are great. You know what I mean? At some point, you just trust what we see on the tape and what he's able to do, putting it into the right role. I think it's Dadrion Taylor-Demerson, safety from Texas Tech. Really like, I'm going through his eval right now, and I like what I see from this young man. Versatile, everything. We will get into him in a little bit. Jaden Hicks out of Washington State. All right, so let me go back. Tyler Nubin, Minnesota. Dadrion Taylor-Demerson, Texas Tech. Jaden Hicks, Washington State, kind of box safety, physical, solid athlete as well. And then Javon Bullard, safety, nickel hybrid from Georgia. Those are my four, I think, day one type of starters at the safety position right now before we get to the draft.
Yeah, DP, I'm going to probably steal one of your guys in Kitan Oladapo. I think he is a starter in the NFL in that role, right? You're talking about another box guy that play close to the line of scrimmage. We've talked to the guy. You've had, personal interviews with him and everything. And then also we've seen him in person, right? Like consistently. This is a big kid, right? Like he's filled out, athletic, muscular, right? Like built the right way. So I like him also as a potential starting safety. Now, DP, I think I want to put this in context of the starting safeties, right? Because we have different conversations about, what is starting and then how high is the ceiling for some of those guys. So when we list off the Tyler Nubins, right, and the Jaden Hicks of the world, what is the ceiling for some of these guys? Because I think NFL fans, they say, okay, we get it. This guy can play on the field and start for us, right? But what are the expectations? Are we going to get any Pro Bowls, potential Pro Bowl caliber type players? Is there any player that has all pro type of potential, or are these just serviceable starters who we probably want to play close to the line of scrimmage?
Man, I think athletically, like you look at Tyler Nubin, it's going to leave you kind of wanting more. But with his ball skills, his instincts, his ability to take the ball away, that right there shoots you right to that kind of all-pro, Pro Bowl type of caliber once we get on the field. Once we get away from the T-shirt and short Olympics that everybody loves around this time, and we get back to actual football on the field, this guy can play in two high coverages. He can roll down as a robber in the middle of the field. You're talking about maybe some cover two invert where he's dropping down as that middle of the field, that middle of the whole rat, just sitting there trying to take away all those in breakers and crossers, post routes, different things like that. He can take those type of plays away, but he also baits quarterbacks very well. He has, I think, a skill set, again, that can play some of these tight ends man-to-man as well, and challenge some of those guys. I saw him against some receivers where he didn't look like a fish out of water either. You got to watch out who you put him against in that situation because you don't want them flat-footed. Like I think we talked about slot fades against some of these like twitchy, explosive slot receivers or just receivers that they throw in the slot, period. Could be a Z or X that they just put in the slot for a mismatch and get him on those guys. But I think he has a high ceiling just on the field because it's hard to teach those instincts, the baitability, right? The ability to bait quarterbacks in the throws, but also the ability to cover ground, get there quickly. Same things we see from Kyle Hamilton, right? We could just wear many hats. Tyler Nubin can do that, man. And I think he has probably one of the higher ceilings. But like you talk about with Kitan didn't make my starters, but we'll talk about him in the next segment for me. Like that ability, the size, the athleticism, the strength, the guy that can literally play tight ends one-on-one. We saw that in the Senior Bowl. It's something that shows up on tape, not just against tight ends. He played receivers, big receivers, small receivers. He lined up in the slot. He lined up out wide. This is another versatile young man who also doesn't mind tackling in the run game also. So I think he has a high ceiling. And the main thing for him is staying healthy and getting with a defensive coordinator that's going to let him just be him and play to the best of his abilities. Some of these other guys, I think they're going to be more like role specific starters. You know what I mean? Where you look at Javon Bullard, that kind of who not I don't want to say Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, but similar to that. Whereas like you're not a full safety, you're
more
like
corner than more corner than safety, right? In that type of context. So no, I'm there with you. With adding that type of context that I think we have a lot of situation specific high level players, right? Like if you put them in the right situation. By the
way, Adrian, I don't know have you watched him yet? The Dadrion Taylor-Demerson?
From Texas Tech?
Yes.
Yeah, I watched glimpses of him, and I thought I really liked what I'm starting to see on film from him. I haven't finished the complete eval of him, but I've gotten eyes on him. He's talking about a guy that's flying under the radar, right? And I just like those guys that are multiple, that are versatile, and can affect the passing game, right? And I really like that in my safeties. And I understand that because I still feel like this DP with the safeties, right? Is that I love a box guy, right, that can tackle. Like I have great appreciation for that, right? But I mean, there's a reason why I believe Ed Reed is the greatest of all time, right? It's the ability to get the football back and to play with instincts and turnovers and be in the middle of the field and, manipulate things and those type of situations. I just love safeties that I feel like can get their hands on the football.
No, 100%, right? The name of the game nowadays is with quarterbacks throwing the ball 35 plus times a game. You know what I mean? Since it's a passing league, you need those guys that can take the ball away. And Keith, I think with DTD, Dadrion Taylor-Demerson, athletic, explosive athlete, the guy that's versatile as well, where he plays the free, he can line up in the nick, he can do a lot of different things for your team. But I love his, and then for a guy that's he came in listed to the combine, like he absolutely killed the combine. He listed 5'10", 197, arms were a little bit shorter, like 30 and 7/8, but 4.41 in the 40, 1.52 10-yard split, 38-inch vert, and a 10.3 in the broad. And just a young man that I think, like if you're looking for more of that free safety that can kind of rotate into single high, he fits that, in my opinion, better than a lot of these other guys.
You know who he kind of reminded me of? Antoine Winfield Jr. I kind of got.
I wrote that down when I was watching this morning.
And DP, I'm going to tweet that out. And don't steal my tweet, DP. I need me a couple more followers, man. Don't steal my tweet, man. Don't steal my tweet. But listen, I definitely think like he reminded me of that, right? Because Antoine wasn't that big, and I remember that safety class. It was supposed to be a pretty good safety class, if I remember. I think that was the Grant Delpit, Xavier McKinney. Ashton Davis, I believe, from the New York Jets, right? And it was a lot of conversation about like, man, is he, because Ashton Davis, I think, was like the 4-3 guy, right, from Cal, that can run. I think he wound up going to the New York Jets. But I remember watching Winfield, and like we talked about, right, something that was a common theme was the instincts, right, and his playmaking ability. And you see, he just got picked up like from Minnesota and just got dropped off in Tampa Bay, and it was just like, continue, right? And then now the guy is a pro bowler, here and there and things like that. So I really like that comp for him, just moving forward and everything. But DP, let's continue to move this conversation forward, man, because they do have a lot of safeties, right? And when we talked about roles, we talked about schemes. Now I want to get deep into the weeds of who these safeties are, talking about the backups potentially with upside, or these guys that are kind of flying under the radar. But if you put them in the right spot, you're probably going to get a high level starter. So let's keep this conversation going and flowing, man. Coming up next, man, we're going to continue to dive into this 2024 NFL draft for the safeties.
Guys, you shouldn't have to worry when it comes down to buying tickets to your next big event. But if you wait till the last minute, you will worry because you're trying to compete with other buyers and find the best deals. But let me introduce you to Game Time. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all your sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. They offer last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals. Their tickets are easy to find and buy. And this is my favorite part. They show the views from all the seats in the venue. So before you purchase that ticket, you know what vantage point you will have specifically. Listen, guys, this Friday night, March 29th at 7 p.m. in Charlotte, Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors travel to the Spectrum Center to face the Charlotte Hornets. And the tickets have even dropped the prices down to $81 from $100, $81 each on the Game Time app. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Backups with upside. Keith, and you name one of my guys, Kitan Oladapo. For me, that he was in that backups with upside. Cameron Kinchins from Miami. And these last two guys, Jalen Simpson from Auburn and then Cole Bishop from Utah. Keith, those are like Jalen Simpson, especially. I'll start there. That, again, nickel safety hybrid, but he has the range over the top to kind of play that free safety. Really good ball skills. A guy that baits quarterbacks very well. The run game is where you're going to have some questions about him. You know what I mean? In terms of just like being solidified, because he still has that thin, wiry frame like a corner, but great footwork. A guy that can mirror and match guys. You talking about walking down to the nickel and literally playing slot corner against some of these high-octane slot receivers and feel good about it, man. The Lad McConkeys, the Ricky Pearsalls in this class, the Roman Wilsons, I feel comfortable with him down in the box, one-on-one with those type of guys, whether that's in press alignment and kind of soft pressing, soft shooting it, or just giving some cushion at 4 to 5 yards and be able to play some catch technique, trigger and drive downhill. You know what I mean? He had a rep against Georgia where it's a skinny post from the slot to Brock Bowers. And, Brock's strong, especially at the catch point, and the physicality that Jalen played with through, driving through the body and through the hands of Brock, preventing the touchdown, causing the PBU. This is a guy I think that, you find that right role for him and you just let him thrive, Keith. I think, but also same thing with Cole Bishop as well. I think he's more of he tested athletically, but I think he's more of a box guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like cover 3 type of safety where you just drop him off in the spots.
I agree. No, I agree 100% with that. I think that's his role, but I think that's why we talk about like you see backups, right? But I guess, role specific, scheme specific guys where if they play a certain position in a certain scheme, I think they can really thrive in it, right? And I look at, just Dan Quinn when he had the Dallas Cowboys and they were able to produce really good defenses, but I don't think there's ever a time that we can point to, right? They had Malik Hooker, and I'm trying to think of some of the other safeties. I'm blanking on a couple of their guys, but
Xavier Woods, maybe.
They had Xavier Woods for a minute, and then it was a taller, leaner safety. I don't know why I'm blanking on his name right now.
Israel Mukuamu.
Yeah, Israel Mukuamu. And they just found these different guys to kind of play that low hold type situation, right? And maybe those guys were not high-level players, but they were still a part of a defense that played at a very high level, right? So I think that'll be interesting to see where these guys fall to in what situations. DP, I want to talk about a guy who had who I mean, some people had first round grades, right? And I can't even remember if I did. I may have Cam Kinchens out of Miami, right? Whose draft stock has who has fallen. And I think I would say this, that I agree if his draft stock has fallen for people, right? Now I 100% understand it's not a first round grade for me. It's not a second round grade for me, right? Like it probably starts in the third round, but I do believe there's a role for him. The player comp that I have for him, and I've said this before, and the career trajectory, probably more, even if you want to compare the measurables, more of career trajectory. He just reminds me of Von Bell, DP. I just get that type of vibe where they're more high level instinctual football players than they are high level athletes, right? And I think Cam Kinchens, this is the worst version of what you're going to get, right? Like something like this, a guy that's not going to test as a high-level athlete, right? That's not going to run a fast 40, that's not going to be explosive, that's not great in one-on-ones. The draft process, a draft season, right, is grueling for them, right? He's probably like, man, look, I can't wait to just get in between the white lines and play football again. Because that's just what it is. It exposes a lot of their holes. So while I think he has that, I think some of those we've seen on film, but also the highlights that you see is that I think those things translate, right? I see what Cam Kinchens has done at Miami, and a lot of those things are simply playing football. And even when he was at Miami Northwestern, right, as a coming out of high school, DP, he was still the same situation, right? He was undersized. It was, you're not fast enough, you're not tall enough, things like that. But he still played high level football in the ACC. So I'm expecting this guy skill set to translate, and he's another, you call it quote unquote backup, right? But I think in the right situation, you can get a starting safety out of it.
No, 100%. And with the backup with upside, I think these are guys that you may not start day one, right? They might be behind an established veteran if you draft them, and then going forward, they build themselves into that starting role for you. And you think about every time I look at Cam Kinchens, I like the Von Bell and the Von Bell comp. I think you've had that comp for months now with Cam Kinchens. I always think like with his ball skills and ability to create turnovers. That's when I really think about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, right? Because Chauncey was so good at taking the ball away. And yeah, you may not, you look at his testing, you say, you know what? I can't play you on the roof. That's fine. Let me be a low hole safety. Let me be that nickel strong safety hybrid in that sense. He's a great blitzer. I think he tackles well. He's not afraid of action and contact. He's not afraid to be a collision player, Keith. So I'm perfectly fine playing him in that 10 to 3 yards in terms of like that box frame where, you know what, that's fine. If you throw passes in my area, it's a very strong possibility I'm going to take it from you. And that's the type of safety he is. You know what I mean? And I think that's where because I get that athletic testing is going to limit what we saw at Miami. Miami played them on the roof. They'll play them single high at Miami, right? NFL teams more than likely are not going to feel comfortable with that, with the level of speed and quarterback arm talent, especially in the league right now. They're not going to want to do that with them. But again, you put them in that Von Bell, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson role, I feel really good about it. And then Keith, like we were talking about Oladapo, for me, I think, coming in and I'm gonna throw a team out there. I want him in Seattle with Mike McDonald, the guy who we've seen like really turn. Like Kyle Hamilton was one. We've always said it, one of the highest graded prospects that we saw over the last couple of years. You know what I mean? Yep. But also getting him with a Mike McDonald who knew how to use him and develop him and allow him to play free. I do think that like he's a better player than Oladapo, of course. The pedigree's there, stuff like that. But for me, with Oladapo, I would love for him to kind of fill that type of role in that Seattle defense for Mike McDonald, because they have the corners, right? They got Tariq Woolen, Devin Witherspoon. They got to figure out what they're going to do with Kobe Bryant, who had a good rookie year. You know what I mean? He was solid as a rookie, and then he kind of fell out of favor
they moved him. Yeah, and they moved him to safety some too. Like he started playing kind of that hybrid, which I thought was interesting. And the reps that I seen was okay, right? But I thought it was interesting because I didn't even think that he necessarily had like that safety frame, right? Like, when you think of safety, you think of the Kitan Oladapos and, guys built like that. And he's a little bit taller, a little bit more wiry. So I wouldn't expected that. But I remember watching him. And like I said, the reps wasn't bad, but it was definitely interesting. But DP, I want to keep this conversation going and flowing, man. We're about to transition. Where are we going to? We're going to perfect fits, right? Where we pick the player, we pick the draft prospect, and then we pick the NFL team, right? And this is we're gonna open it up a little bit, right? We're going rounds 1, 2, and 3, right? We're not staying in the first round. We're gonna throw out some different names and different situations. So coming up next, man, we're gonna talk about perfect fits. What NFL draft prospect, what NFL team? They need to be a perfect fit, so that way both situations can be mutually beneficial. Coming up next.
Say goodbye to busted brackets, because FanDuel lets you bet on every single game of the tournament. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a number 1 seed, it's time to go dancing, guys, on America's number 1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Let me repeat that. Right now, new customers get $200 back in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All right, that's $200 to use on everything from point spreads, money lines, so much more. You can even, and I mean this, you can even pick who you believe is going to win the entire tournament, the entire thing. So just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. Thank y'all for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. Keith, perfect fits. We talked about this guy last week as well, because he had his pro day. He gritty, he gutted it out. Kool-aid McKinstry. With L'Jarius Sneed being traded from the Kansas City Chiefs to the Tennessee Titans, you talk about a perfect fit for that Steve Spagnuolo's press man physical defense. I think he walks right into that role alongside Trent McDuffie, and Steve Spagnuolo says, we thrive, baby. Give me Kool-aid McKinstry to those Kansas City Chiefs. I love this fit so much. Shout out to my guy, Daniel Harms. Me and him was kind of talking it through, because we was talking about that. He said, man, I think he'll be a great fit. And I said, man, that's crazy, because that's not a team I've ever thought about with Kool-aid, because also I never thought Kool-aid would fall to 32. But because of the injury, as you always say, out of sight, out of mind, maybe he does slip down the board a little further than we expect and deeper into the late 20s, into close to 32. And if he's there, especially with the L'Jarius Sneed trade, I know they got Joshua Williams. They have, I think, young Watson. They have some young players, but I don't think any of those guys are ready for the limelight, Keith. It's a different ball game when them lights are bright and you're standing across from Jalen Waddle while Trent McDuffie's got Tyreek Hill. It's a different ball game when you got to deal with T. Higgins and McDuffie's got Jamar Chase. That's a different animal in itself. Or Stephon Diggs, or whoever's running alongside of him. I don't know if those young guys are ready for that skill set wise, but I think Kool-aid can walk in as a day 1 starter and probably make himself a Pro Bowl rookie. With his man-to-man skills, the best man-to-man corner in this class, and I don't know if it's close, Keith, put him perfect fit. Kool-aid McKinstry to the Kansas City Chiefs and that Steve Spagnuolo defense, man, I'd love to see it.
DP, I like that one, and I like that one so much that I wish I would have thought of it. It actually, sometimes when and it's respect, right? That sometimes somebody says something, you may say something, and it's like, I like that so much. I wish I would have thought of it, right? That was a high level moment right there, and I really like that situation, and it's time relevant also, right? With them, not having L'Jarius Sneed no more. DP, I'm going to the Dallas Cowboys, man, and I'm going with this. Like I'm looking at their roster, right? And you look at their roster, and it's Dak Prescott at quarterback, right? Then running back, they have Rico Dowdle and Deuce Vaughn. Then I look at their wide receiver, DP, is CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks. And then after that, you get to Jalen Tolbert, Kevontae Turpin. So essentially, there's not a wide receiver 3 there. The person that I like there, DP, is go get a Javon Baker, right? Go get a guy that's been at Alabama, right? A guy that transferred, a guy that, you feel like you can tell in his play style that he has some grit. And what I like about him is that Dak appears to be a timing and tempo guy, right? Like he wants to be able to, figure that thing out. Even when he had all the interceptions, remember, it was just like balls were high, and you can tell that him and the wide receiver wasn't on the same page. But I think Javon Baker has enough football acumen to be able to get on the same page with Dak Prescott. So I like Javon Baker, wide receiver from UCF, to go to the Dallas Cowboys because I don't know what the Dallas Cowboys are doing right now, but I just feel like they need more, right? They definitely need more on the offensive side of the football if they're going to be the team that's going to score 30 points a game and try to take it. But I mean, even if they're trying to run a football, you need a running back also. So you go either way. But I really like Javon Baker going to the Dallas Cowboys. And I've said this and I'm going to say this again. In this situation where popularity kind of sometimes runs the draft narrative, and I just remember Rashee Rice being so popular at this time, right? It was like Rashee Rice. I don't understand why there's not the same kind of momentum for Javon Baker, because we talked about it on this podcast, right? Skill set for skill set, Javon may be the more talented guy. Now, what would happen in the NFL? Who knows who Javon plays with? Rashee Rice is playing with Patrick Mahomes, right? It's hard to beat that. But I'm going to go with that one as my first perfect fit.
No, I like that. I like that a lot because, again, they need wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. I think they still have Brandon Cooks, but they need somebody to build up besides CeeDee Lamb. And I think Baker will give them a nice option in Dallas. Keith, I'll go to my last one, man. Give me Spencer Rattler to the Las Vegas Raiders, Keith, on day 2. Give me quarterback out of South Carolina, Spencer Rattler. They brought in Gardner Minshew. They have Aiden O'Connell. I'm not moved by it. You know what I mean? I'm not moved by it at all. I'd rather bring in that competition. I think Rattler could walk in there, and I'm going to say this, even if he doesn't win the quote-unquote QB battle in camp, right? You don't want, like, if that's not the case, that's fine with me, because what you do is you it's a simple solution. You let Aiden O'Connell go out there for the first 3 or 4 games. If he's not playing well, you go ahead and put QB2 and you put that Spencer Rattler. And I think Minshew is the type of guy and QB that's perfect for that room to mesh everything together, because he's not an egomaniac. He's not a guy who's going to hit you with the Ryan Tannehill. It's not my job to help the young guy get up to speed, right? Or to coach him up. He's not going to have that type of ego. He's going to do what's best for the team. And if it's, hey, being that kind of extra coach for these young men, perfect. Be the Ryan Fitzpatrick to Spencer Rattler's Tua Tagovailoa. Minshew won't have a problem with that. But you put him in this offense in terms of Spencer Rattler, they're going to have the run game with Zamir White. You have Jacoby Myers, Michael Mayer at tight end. You got Devontae Adams as your number 1 wide receiver. Antonio Pierce is going to run the ball, give him play action opportunities. And I think that we've seen Spencer be able to find some way to thrive and play as best he could on a bad South Carolina team. You put him on a team with weapons, and all those guys I just named are legitimate weapons. You know what I mean? I think that he can absolutely flourish in Las Vegas.
Yeah, no, I think he could. The only worry I would have, DP, is that I just feel like this, and I think we should make this a whole podcast, but just with the quarterback conversation, if we have 4 going like the top 10, I think there's going to be another guy that goes, right? Like there may be 1 or 2 more guys, and that's the part that make me nervous. And I think the other teams are going to get nervous too. Is like, hey, all these guys, so it's like, my 5th and 6th quarterback, they still have 20-something picks to go in the first round, right? So I may have to move up and go get them. That'd be the only thing. But I definitely like that pick. I like it with Antonio Pierce. I like the version of Spencer Rattler that we've seen, that we've seen in interviews. He seems to be mature, handling everything a different way. I think he's a good guy for what Antonio Pierce is trying to build from a culture perspective. Real quick, DP, I'm a wrap mines up with the San Francisco 49ers, right? And we consistently compare this guy to Deebo Samuel, and it's like, you know what? Why not just go ahead and put him in the scheme? And that's Malachi Corley, right? And I'm looking at the San Francisco 49ers draft picks, and they have a first rounder, second rounder, third rounder, 3 fourths. So you have draft compensation to move up and down the board a little bit, right? If you want to package 2 of those fourths for a third or all 3 to get another 3rd round pick, right? And get a guy like Malachi Corley. The other reason why is not just because they comp the same, it's because potentially they have similar skill sets. And we have to have the conversation about Deebo Samuel and the injuries, right? And we have to start looking at that. And we talking about the NFC Championship game. We talking about, divisional round. We talking about the Super Bowl. If you're out for an entire drive, right, and you go and get your ankle worked on, DP, that's 10, 12 plays we're not getting back, right? I think they said on average the NFL, NFL gets what I think you get. Your team gets between 6 and 9 opportunities to have the football, right? So each one of those are very important, DP. And we can't afford to be like, hey, we have to stall out because we don't have our guy on the field. And if that's the case, then I feel like bringing in somebody with a similar skill set, not saying that he is Deebo Samuel, but a wide receiver that stick lowers, that you feel comfortable with handing the football off to, doing different things, run after the catchability, that can make some plays just to kind of help you out and kind of balance that thing out. So that's the other perfect fit that I have with DP. Listen, man, that wraps up another episode of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to say shout out to everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day, man. I said it at the top of the show. I'm about to say it at the bottom of the show. Listen, go ahead, hit that like button. Go ahead and comment. And if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel with the best NFL draft content, go ahead and subscribe to the Locked On NFL Draft YouTube channel and tell a friend to tell a friend. Listen, I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That is my guy. My guy, Damian Parson. We do this each and every single day, man. And you can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we always like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. And listen, guys, as we always tell you, come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.